This is Montreal Now, the podcast on the iHeartRadio network. I'm Natasha Hall.
And I'm also Natasha Hall.
No, you're not.
No, I'm Aaron Rand, sorry. This is where you'll find candid conversation about what's going on in the world, in the city, and in your life.
We'll talk about the things that bond us together and divide us, the common experience, along with the unusual, and also the stories that might be hard to hear but really need to be heard.
Yeah, we'll also talk to politicians, experts, educators, and leaders. But often the most riveting stories come from people right here in the community talking about their real life experiences.
There will always be a laugh or two as we try to get you caught up on what's happening around you. Maybe you need some practical advice. Maybe you're looking for answers. Or you might just need to feel like you're not the only one going through something right now.
Yeah, and by the way, Natasha, you did forget to mention that each week, of course, there will be a musical segment where I will actually get to sing.
No, that's not happening.
We're not doing that?
No singing, Aaron, no.
Oh.
Lots of talking, no singing.
Who would lie to me about that? Well, we'll see. But we'll certainly keep you company with the Montreal Now Podcast, so thanks so much for coming along for the ride here for the Montreal Now Podcast on the iHeartRadio network.
I'm David Hertel, filling in for Aaron and Natasha, and this is the Montreal Now Podcast. This week, I spoke to a workforce performance strategist about new, innovative ways to attract and retain employees. A Concordia University professor explains why women who want to have kids later in life still feel stigmatized. The food professor, SYLVAIN CHARLEBOIS, will tell you who's to blame for crazy food prices. And why is the RCMP refusing to name the spyware it uses to monitor Canadians? I got an interesting answer from a cybersecurity expert. And finally, Andrew Carter remembers legendary CJAD host Dave Fisher.
Informative, interactive, and always interesting. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Up to 9 weeks of vacation, unlimited telecommuting. Is this the new way to attract employees? I spoke with AJAY Pangarkar, workforce performance strategist and award-winning author. So imagine this. You get a new job, and right from the start, you get 8 to 9 weeks paid vacation. You can work from home based on your needs and your schedule. You can choose the benefits you need according to your needs. And this is just the beginning. And there's certain Quebec companies who are offering this right now. Would you like to have that job? Sounds good to me. So it seems that certain companies are reacting to the labor shortage crisis by offering very, very favorable conditions, and this seems to be a trend. And to help us understand that trend, happy to be joined as always by AJAY Pangarkar, workforce performance strategist and award-winning author. He's a partner at centralknowledge.com. Hey, AJAY.
David, great chatting with you. And by the way, where do I apply?
It sounds good. I'd like to apply. So is this an isolated case? I mean, I'm taking this from a La Presse article published earlier this week, but it seems to be a growing trend. Companies are really offering very interesting benefits right now to draw employees and to keep them.
We are, it's safe to say we are living in very interesting times economically. This is not out of the ordinary, only because the market is, of course, number one, we have exceptionally low unemployment rates, what some economists would call, as you know, full employment. Second, we have people changing jobs because of work-life integration and a realization they can do different things rather than what they've been always doing. So they're rethinking what they do and how they do it and where they do it. And of course, so there's a lot of shift here. So for the employer, it's placing a lot of demands on where do we need to find the right people. And so the article you're speaking about, I read it, and it is quite extraordinary because I don't think a lot of companies are going to this extreme. But safe to say the message is that, number one, we need to basically treat our employees like employees, not as just another asset within the company, and treat them like human beings. So that's refreshing. And number two, they're rewarding something that, will commit to some sort of loyalty to the company, which is, I think in the article they say they've retained in 10 years 40 out of 67 employees of their staff. So overall, it's not a bad thing, except that, fiscally the company has to also be responsible in what they're offering. So there's a give and take here. But essentially there is a trend for companies, especially smaller ones, to try to find the right people and offer them sort of incentives to be with them.
Now, I don't know, AJ, if there's real data on this yet, but do you get the sense that this is a growing trend, or is this like an outlier? And also, how does it affect productivity? Because if you're starting off with, working from home whenever you want, and you got 8-9 weeks, I mean, do you think it has an impact on productivity?
Yes. I mean, one thing you have to ask yourself beneath the surface is, how is this company measuring employee performance? And if they're doing it right, they're measuring performance on the productivity output. And if they put in the right measures in place, they're still, allowing the employees to work and gain rewards as they should gain rewards for the work that they put in. And hopefully, if they did that right, they're going to retain those employees no matter what benefits they're going to offer. But to answer your first question, because I sort of skipped over it, yes, it is a trend. However, these are pendulum swings in the economy right now.
Right.
As you know, we're looking at a recession possibly coming up, and with recession comes cutbacks. And so if you're thinking about applying to this or other companies who offer these incentives, guess what's going to happen when a recession hits? Number one, last one in is going to be the first one out. Number two, a lot of these perks and benefits that cost a lot of money to support may be scaled back to a certain extent. So you may not be seeing the same level of welcoming, incentives that you got in the first place. So and so you have to be very careful when you apply for these type of companies. But in short, companies who do this type of thing on a regular basis, notwithstanding what the economy is like, there are good companies out there that offer great incentives to bring people on board. They're consistent, and they do retain their employees because they're bringing in the right people. But at the same time, they have an excellent hiring process to find the right people too. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, David, just to make people clear about it.
No, I think it's very important. That's why you're the expert. There are a lot of moving parts in this. And so maybe for the few minutes remaining, I'd like to talk about these different parts and get your take, because I'm reading a lot of different articles on dealing with the labor shortage and what employers are trying to do. Like, for example, one thing that I've been reading a lot about is focusing more on how the new employee will mesh and will integrate the team. It seems that there is a much bigger premium put on that aspect, how that person will actually fit, than, for example, maybe in previous years or before, we were looking for specific types of experiences and a certain type of CV. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yes, I mean, because we're living in a very interdependent economic environment, societal environment, and so you need people to work together and collaborate. That's always sort of been the case in companies, but more so now that you want to find the right fit for the people. So going back to that hiring process that we spoke about, when I was hiring people many, many years ago in a company I worked for, I never looked at the skill necessarily, because everybody who applied typically had the basic skill sets to do the job. What I was looking is what I used to call, what I call today, the enabling competencies, the things that you cannot really train people for, the teamwork, the leadership, the interaction with other people, how the quality of their personalities, all these little things that come into play that I can teach anybody to do the skill. I can't teach people to be a team player. And so that's the thing that I think more companies are looking for when they're hiring the right people, because at the end of the day, it costs a lot of money to hire people. And if you're going to go in there, you're competing with everybody else with the same skills. So what are you bringing to the table as far as the personality and those traits I spoke about that will differentiate you from others? And that's really, really important. I'll give you a quick example, David.
Sure.
I have a neighbor. She's just started a new job. She's been there 3 months for a major company. And she says, I like my boss, and he likes me because he didn't hire me for the best skills. He hired me because I'm a doer. I can go and solve problems. And so he really enjoys having her there. And I said, well, that's great. Keep that up, because you'll get any job that way. And so I want people to keep that in mind when they're looking for a new job or looking for a job.
So is this, because I just have a couple of minutes remaining, AJ, and this is always very interesting to speak with you. So if for our listeners out there who actually manage or are in HR in smaller companies, it's not the big multinational company. Yeah. So how do you evaluate that? What's the best way to get a sense of those employees that have these competencies that you can't really, train for?
Well, there's a couple of ways. One is that, through your interview process, the questioning, of course, you can question them for the skill set that they need.
Sure.
And the experience. That's the easy part. But you need to ask them questions about their personality. And without violating your laws, of course. Mm-hmm. But you need to ask them, situations, or put them in contextual situations of how they would handle it and see what their response is. Now, you're not looking for a perfect answer. You're looking at how they're, dealing with that situation.
It's how they're responding. It's not necessarily what they're responding.
Exactly, because if, and it's here's a classic example. There was years ago, Google used to ask the question to programmers, how many gas stations are there in the United States? And the ones who said, well, I don't know how to calculate that, it's a big number. But people who said, well, I don't know the number, but I can look at the demographics of the country, and then I can look at how many cars are being driven, or what fuel they went about solving the problem, and it showed that they had an advanced thinking skill about problem solving, which shows the difference between somebody says answering, I don't know, how would I know that answer, to somebody trying to solve it and not necessarily giving the answer, but trying to solve it. And that shows the quality difference between the people you're hiring. And finally, of course, you can check references as well, of course,
sure,
from their past jobs, but that's not always a guarantee. So,
but sounds a lot also before you even start interviewing to really evaluate what you're looking for in terms of these qualities.
Yeah, I mean, just in short, I developed a course of LinkedIn Learning called Job Interview for Accountants, Job Interview Skills for Accountants, and accountants know their accounting skills very well. I know a lot of accountants; they know it very well.
Sure.
What they don't know, what the ones that are really good know how to solve problems and are conceptual. And so that's what I share in that course. And it's really what people need to do is to show that I'm a doer, I'm a problem solver, and I'm an engager. I mean, I get people involved in helping to solve issues. And that's what employers want to see. And if you do that, I guarantee you this, you'll probably keep your job for a long time, and you'll probably see a lot of advancement or mobility within that company. So,
AJ, that's all the time I have. But as always, very interesting, very insightful. Appreciate your time this afternoon.
David, it's always a pleasure talking with you, and have a great heat wave.
Yeah, you too. Stay hydrated, my friend. AJAY PANGARKAR, workforce performance strategist and award-winning author. He's a partner at centralknowledge.com.
Asking questions, looking for answers. Here's more of Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
I'm David Hertel, filling in for Aaron and Natasha, and this is the Montreal Now Podcast. Women who want to have kids later in life still feel stigmatized. Why? I spoke with FRANCESCA SCALA, professor of political science at Concordia University. And I'm joined now by Professor FRANCESCA SCALA. She is professor of political science at Concordia University and co-author of the study I just mentioned. Professor SCALA, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, David. It's a pleasure.
So tell me what the study, why did you decide to make the study, and what was the premise of the study?
Well, what we wanted to do is we know that the trend now is that more and more women are delaying childbearing, right? So they're becoming pregnant with their first child later on in life. And so we wanted to understand that trend, and we wanted to see if and how older motherhood and older mothers are being problematized in policy text, right? So government documents, government websites, any kinds of guidelines by health authorities. So that was our interest as social scientists to see, to understand what are some of the biomedical risks that are associated with pregnancy later on in life. And we know that there, as a woman ages, the complications increase when she becomes pregnant. And when she gives birth. But we were really interested to see what kind of messages were being communicated about older motherhood and having children later on in life.
And just to be clear, this covered what happens only in Canada, right, with the federal government?
That's right. So it's a Canadian study. It looks at Canadian, mostly federal policy documents, right, and by health authorities. But we also looked at some of the provincial reports or public statements by health authorities on issues related to access to IVF, issues related to fertility, and also some of the programs they put in place that specifically target women who are having children after age 35, right? Because they're considered, they're under the risk category of advanced maternal age. So once a woman reaches the age of 35, there are certain policies or programs or issues that health authorities want to communicate to them.
And the documents you studied are fairly recent, right?
Some of them are fairly recent, but we decided to look at or to begin our study from 1993. And we chose 1993 because that's when the Royal Commission on Reproductive Technologies published its report on infertility, on fertility treatments, and all sorts of related topics. So that we thought was a good starting point to see what were some of the discussions, what were some of the debates around access to infertility treatments, were there any concerns around age, maternal age, and whether or not that should be a factor to consider when deciding who can and cannot access fertility treatments.
Okay, so what are the main or the top conclusions of the study?
Well, the main conclusions are that there are three main representations of older mothers, right? So the first one is that older mothers are typically regarded as risky maternal subjects, right? So there's a lot of emphasis on the biomedical risks associated with having children later on in life, but really this idea that women are putting themselves and are putting their offspring at risk. And there's a lot of anxiety surrounding women having children later on in life concerning disability or the potential to give birth to a disabled child. So that was one of the representations. The second one was older mothers as unnatural mothers. There's this idea that older mothers, may be too old, may not have the energy, the physical or emotional or psychological energy to keep up with the daily demands of motherhood. And this idea that motherhood today, the expectation is that it should be an all-consuming, all-encompassing role for women. And somehow older mothers don't have that kind of energy to really dedicate themselves to, what we call intensive mothering practices. And the third one was that older mothers were being represented as potentially irresponsible reproductive citizens, right?
Really?
That they should be making decisions to ensure their fertility, to make sure that they're going to have healthy children, to make those kinds of right decisions and to choose an ideal time to have children and to listen to their biological clock in order to minimize the risks and not be a drain on the healthcare system because we know when women have children later on, there's higher risks, and that is associated with higher healthcare costs.
So did you make any conclusions about what should be corrected or what should be modernized in the way we talk about older mothers?
Yeah, and I think that's what we were trying to get at with the study is that we should have a more balanced view. And we should also recognize that women's path to motherhood is really shaped by broader social, political, and economic forces. So this idea that, we're leaving it up to women or women should be primarily, responsible for making these kinds of decisions, we have to recognize that there are so many different factors that are impacting and shaping why women are delaying pregnancy. And we should also perhaps, bring into the discussion some of the benefits of waiting to have children, financial security, perhaps being in a more stable relationship. And also, studies suggest that older mothers have the patience, are better prepared to have children. So there are benefits to having children later on, but we tend to emphasize the negatives, the risks. And I think that's something that we wanted to shed light on.
So have you been in touch with the federal government or provincial governments since you finished the study?
No, we haven't. So the study was published in June. But definitely, I think we're going to be presenting before some specialists, fertility specialists, right, really to talk about age limits when it comes to accessing IVF and related fertility treatments.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the questions that is being raised about who should access IVF and whether age or maternal age should be a factor for doctors or specialists to consider whether or not they make appropriate patients for this kind of treatment.
Sorry. So could we conclude that somehow this is a form of ageism?
Absolutely. This is the argument that we're making in this paper, that there is underlying some of these biomedical discussions about risk. There is also, these kinds of ageist ideas about what or who the ideal mother is. So our notion of the ideal mother is not necessarily young, because certainly, we would argue that, teenage mothers are also heavily stigmatized, more so, right? But this idea that, the ideal mother is youthful, has the youthful energy, and also that's also premised on the idea that women are the primary caretakers and caregivers of children, right? So this is something that we wanted to address in the paper. So ageism is certainly is an undercurrent in a lot of these kinds of discussions about, who the ideal mother is.
Yeah, and what would be the age threshold? I mean, are we talking about 35 and up or 30 and up?
Well, and I would think that the anxiety around maternal age, increases as the woman ages as well, right? So right now, advanced maternal age, what used to be called geriatric pregnancy, is 35 and over, right? And now we use the term advanced maternal age. But again, we have women who are having children in their 40s, and more often than not with the help of infertility treatments. We also have these sensational stories about women having children, post-menopausal women having children in their 50s and 60s. So those are the extreme cases. But what we're finding is that in the literature, as soon as you reach the age of 35, you're placed in that category of advanced maternal age, and that's become an automatic risk category for women.
And my final question is about ableism, because you also refer to that terminology.
Definitely. I think what's happening here is there's a lot of anxiety around older mothers, and that anxiety really centers on the prevention of having disabled children. So there's a lot of emphasis on the risk that older mothers have on their potential disabled offspring. So how do we minimize that risk through genetic screening, prenatal screening, and all of those sorts of things? But also this idea that, the aging mother and the aging body, right, there's the potential for limited mobility. And what does that mean for a woman's capacity to engage fully in motherhood?
Very interesting. I hope the governments will listen and follow up on this. Please keep us informed on the consequences of this fascinating study. I really appreciate you coming on today, Professor Scala.
Thanks very much, Dave.
FRANCESCA SCALA is professor of political science at Concordia University and co-author of this study.
The stories in the news that are worth your time. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
I'm David Hertel, filling in for Aaron and Natasha, and this is the Montreal Now Podcast. The food professor at Dalhousie University, SYLVAIN CHARLEBOIS, joined me to explain who's to blame for crazy food prices. Well, I don't have to tell you that a big part of these rising inflation rates is the price of food. And over the past few weeks and months, a lot of questions have been raised about the grocery store chains, the big chains, and the way they manage the prices. And are those increases of food on their end, or are there reasons why? And to explain to us the food price situation and if these major big chains are gouging us, Always happy to have on the food professor himself from Dalhousie University, SYLVAIN CHARLEBOIS. Hi, SYLVAIN.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Busy. It's July. I'm encouraging people to look at the calendars. Things should be slowing down, but it hasn't because of inflation and all the problems we're facing right now.
So, yeah, absolutely. And so you wrote an interesting piece last week that was published in La Presse about what is behind these price increases. And you're looking specifically at the big grocery store chains because there's been a lot of talk like they've made a killing during the pandemic and they could be still trying to make a hefty profit. But you're showing that the increase in price is not necessarily coming from those grocery store chains.
Not really. Now, grocers are an easy target to analyze because all of their financial statements are public. So you can basically dive into their numbers and see exactly if there's any anomalies. So what we did as a lab was to actually look at the last 5 years for all the big, for all three big grocers. So Loblaws, Empire Sobeys, and Metro. And so in Quebec, of course, so Empire Sobeys is known more as IGA, and for Loblaws, it's Provigo. And over the last 5 years, when we looked at gross margins and profits, ratios are basically the same. There are a few exceptions, though. I mean, for example, Metro, when it bought Jean Coutu in 2018, you can see that it skewed financial results, but overall it's been pretty consistent. So I know that a few politicians and groups have actually accused grocers of greedflation. We just don't see it in the data. So if they are accusing these grocers of greedflation, I don't know where they're getting the data, but we can't see it.
You're not seeing any evidence of that at all?
No, not at all. But now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist because, of course, we haven't looked at processing. We haven't looked at transportation, even farming. I mean, a lot of people are questioning whether or not milk prices should be going up by 25, 30% this year. I mean, is that really necessary? Ice cream is up 17%. I mean, right now, parents are not screaming for ice cream. They're screaming at ice cream.
Absolutely. Good one, Sylvain. Good one.
Yeah, there you go. That one's free. That one's free.
So where are the price increases coming from then?
I think there's a bunch of issues. Of course, COVID kind of made things complicated with supply chain. So freight costs are up. It's taking longer to ship things. We're wasting more food across the cold chain. Yeah. And so that's really adding up. It's compounding costs. Labor is an issue as well. If you either have to pay more or you have fewer people around, so it leads to more waste, more costs. The issue, Ukraine, I mean, basically generated a new cycle of higher input costs in the spring. That's working its way through the supply chain. So Wednesday, we're expecting some really ugly numbers from StatScan for the month of June, but we are seeing a calmer scenario at the grocery store. Things are calming down a little bit, I'll be honest with you. The only exception is dairy. Other than that, it's not as bad as it used to. Things are really so we are expecting the food inflation rate to start to drop starting in July, August. So
Sylvain, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay. There was an abrupt cutoff. Sorry. So do you think that these prices will start coming down again anytime soon?
What I said is that food inflation will start to drop. It doesn't mean that food prices will stop increasing. That's the thing. So at 10%, that's a lot. And I know that a lot of people are demonizing food inflation. You need food inflation in order for our food to be of quality and to make sure that companies stick around. You need companies to make a profit, or else they wouldn't stick around.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the problem. So you want inflation to be anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5%. At 9.7%, that's just not sustainable.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically you want that to come down, and it will eventually go down in Q4.
Oh, it's so 2024, not before then.
No, in Q4.
Oh, Q4.
From September to December, yeah.
I see. And also in your piece, you were talking about the role of government in this, even suggesting that there might be certain investigations and certain practices.
Well, so here's the thing. So politicians like Jagmeet Singh are accusing companies with data we don't have access to. But he's also asking for an investigation, and frankly, I'm actually in favor of that. Why? Because, well, we're not sure if it's not happening. Like beef prices are up, way up, beyond what we can explain. Other products is the same. So we may want to look into this as a country, as the Americans have recently. And so, and I think the Competition Bureau would need some support to look into these matters as much as possible. I mean, if some people out there are listening in and they're skeptical about food prices, well, they have every right to be skeptical, because we did have a bread cartel for 14 years in Canada. And we all learned about it back in 2017. And so, yeah, absolutely. People have every right to be skeptical, and also that I think they deserve answers in terms of what's actually going on across the industry.
Are you thinking about the dairy sector, for example?
The dairy sector is a problem, and I'm not pointing fingers at dairy farmers. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the regime itself, starting with the Canadian Dairy Commission. The Canadian Dairy Commission does not disclose any primary data at all. And it doesn't really explain how it comes up with like record hikes, as we saw in February, and now another increase in September at 2.5% as kids go back to school. I think we deserve answers. And the other thing we learned last week, which nobody knew about, is that executives at the Crown, at Canadian Dairy Commission, receive bonuses. These are federal employees. They receive bonuses to increase while milk prices are skyrocketing. Now, there's nothing wrong with bonuses, but at least tell us why and the amounts they got.
Right. Any other sectors raising questions?
So, yeah, bovine's another one, I'd say. Beef, meat analogs, so the plant-based products are super expensive. We don't know why still. There's more competition in the system, so prices have dropped by now. Dairy alternatives like soy milk, almond milk, all these products are at parity with milk. They shouldn't. They should be cheaper by now. So there's lots of question marks in there we need to look into.
So is there, have you heard of anything going on with the Competition Bureau? Are there complaints, investigations ongoing? Is there any movement there? Nothing. Yeah, nothing. Well, it's not a huge unit either. I mean, We've worked with the Competition Bureau on a couple of files. Whenever a grocer buys another grocer, they call us, ask for advice. They don't listen to us, but that's okay. They also looked into the bread price fixing scheme, so we worked with them on that one too, and that's still ongoing. So they need resources. That's what they need, really. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a major problem in the federal government these days. Well, we listen to you, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. As always, very insightful.
All right, take care.
Informative, interactive, and always interesting. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
I'm David Hertel, filling in for Aaron and Natasha, and this is the Montreal Now Podcast. Why is the RCMP refusing to name the spyware it uses to monitor Canadians? I spoke with Jacques Sauvé, cybersecurity expert at Trilogiam, a consulting firm. Let's move on to our next story. Last month, during a parliamentary hearing in Ottawa, an MP asked a question, and an RCMP representative, almost by accident, admitted that the RCMP uses spyware on us, on Canadian citizens. Yet, after repeated attempts to have more information, the RCMP still refuses to name the spyware that is used to monitor Canadians. And this has been going on for years. So to make sense of all this, I'm happy to be joined by Jacques Sauvé. He's a cybersecurity expert at Trilogiam, a consulting firm. So first of all, tell me about spyware. What are we talking about when we talk about this RCMP using spyware? What does that mean?
Well, it's essentially using, malware, if you will. We've all heard about cyber incidents, cyber attacks, where bad guys will install malware on somebody's PC and exfiltrate data and then encrypt it, right? So it's something that's, shouldn't be there, right? Of course, when bad guys use it, it's one thing. Now, when authorities use it,
the good guys,
and since your researcher called me yesterday, I kind of dug a little more into the topic, and the RCMP uses spyware or software to spy on bad guys, and I'm like, okay, here's my 4 cents, which used to be 2 cents, but with inflation now it's 4 cents.
But wow, Jacques, you have writers, you're doing comedy. You should go to Just for Laughs, man.
There you go. But I'm like, so. Right, so everybody's got mobile phones today, and maybe authorities are using spyware or software on those phones to listen to bad guys. Yeah. But hey, phones have been around for quite a few decades now. Yes. Wiretaps. I was just reading a story from 2007 when they found guilty a bunch of Haitian street gang drug lords. And how did they catch them? Well, they tapped their phones and listened to their conversations. They followed them. They infiltrated them, right? So undercover agents. It's a lot more dangerous for these guys. Today, because of the pervasiveness of these mobile devices, all you got to do is install a piece of software on it, and hey, you can track them, listen to them, and all that. Now, there's all this concern about, security and privacy and right to privacy and all that.
There are legal considerations, is there a warrant? Did a judge approve this, et cetera, et cetera?
Of course, and I want to believe, maybe I'm just naive, but I want to believe that the RCMP can't just decide that, oh, hey, I'm going to install this on Jacques' phone and listen to what he does and look at his pictures and blah, blah, blah. They have to get a judicial warrant, and they have to have probable cause. It's how we catch bad guys, right? So, they don't want to tell us which one they're using. Fine. They don't have to. I don't think the authorities or the law enforcement agencies have to tell the public all the tools and methods they're using, because we don't want to tell the bad guys how we're doing it, and so...
So, with technology, from what you know, is privacy just a myth now? Because, if someone, a bad guy or even good guys, want to tap in, they can, right?
Well, they could, but, most of these, I was reading about Pegasus, and then there's another one called Predator, which, is another one kind of like the Pegasus software that installs. And most of them, you need a user action, most of them. You need a user action. You need to click on something. It's like a phishing email, right? Oh, click here and come and log into your bank, and we need to change your password. And of course, you don't do that. But most of the reports I was reading about the Pegasus software and the other ones do require some interaction from the user. So again, user education goes a long way. Don't click on stuff you don't know where it's coming from. But this idea of law enforcement listening to citizens and tracking them and following them is nothing new. All that's changed is the technology, right? So,
no. Even after 9/11, there was a lot going on.
And to your point, when I hear people whine and complain about privacy and government's listening to us, and then they go on Facebook and they answer stupid questions like, "What was the color of your first car? What was the model of your first car? And what was your mother's maiden name?" Well, that's a bigger issue in terms of privacy and identity theft than worrying about Big Brother or RCMP, tracking your phone.
No, you're so right. We had an expert on last week talking to us about the fact that people put all their travel and vacation pictures on and explaining they're on vacation. And and if it's easy to get your address, you're inviting burglars to go to your place.
Of course.
Because you're telling everybody you're on vacation, you're not home.
Absolutely. People share much more so much more private information than they should be worried about from the RCMP, honestly. And,
This is a very interesting conversation. Appreciate your perspective. Thank you very much, Jacques, for joining us this afternoon.
You're very welcome.
Asking questions, looking for answers. Here's more of Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
I'm David Hertel, filling in for Aaron and Natasha, and this is the Montreal Now Podcast. Legendary CJAD 800 host Dave Fisher passed away earlier this week. The host of the Andrew Carter Morning Show on CJAD 800, Andrew Carter, remembers his legacy. Very sad news here at CJAD 800. Legendary host Dave Fisher has passed away. He was on the air for 32 years. He started in March 1984 when he began hosting weekend shows on CJAD 800, and he has been with the station in the same time slot ever since. His shows were Dave's World, the Home Improvement Show, and the legendary CJAD 800 Trivia Show. His last show was in August of 2016 when he retired. He's, of course, on our Wall of Fame. He passed away from a heart attack at 71. To remember Dave Fisher, I'm joined by the host of the Andrew Carter Morning Show, Andrew Carter. Andrew, how are you taking the news?
Well, Dave, hi, Dave. First of all, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about Dave Fisher. I mean, in my estimation, he was I always thought he was the best radio announcer I'd ever heard. He could do any format. He made it. You know what they say about the legends like Johnny Carson and so on. They just made it look easy.
Yeah.
He never made it about himself, and he was a consummate professional. I really don't know what else to say about him. It's just wild. It really is. It's hard to imagine because he retired well. And I feel bad for him and for his wife.
Andrew, for some of our listeners who may not know Dave Fisher, I mean, what would you say defined him? You mentioned, of course, how great he was, how easy he made it look. But you're talking about shows that are still going on today, like the trivia show that are mainstays at CJAD 800, and he made them mainstays.
Well, I first met Dave in about 1984, 85. I was a very young reporter in the newsroom, and he was, a handsome, sandy, blonde-haired. He kind of lost his hair after a while, but at the time he was, sandy, blonde-haired, very good dresser, looked good, handsome guy. And I always revered him because he was just he was at the, moving into the top of his game at that point, and he did a really good job. But I think what I really appreciated about Dave is that he never, how am I going to put this in a way that makes sense? He was never beholden to management. He was his own guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he could come across as a curmudgeon at times, when it came to the dealings with management, but he never gave an inch, as far as I'm concerned. I always respected that because it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But he was just so good at what he did that he didn't have to bow, to the demands of the regular human being, radio announcer.
Right.
Good guy. Great announcer.
Well, Andrew, I really appreciate you coming on this afternoon to remember Dave Fisher. Thanks.
Yeah, once again, my sincerest condolences go out to Dave Fisher and his family, and to Rita Stafford's family as well, Donna and Lynn as well. Who, if you're just joining us, Rita Stafford also passed away recently. And
our condolences from the entire CJAD 800 family.
Dave, thanks
to both families. Thank you, Andrew.
So this is the end. There are so many to thank, the loyal listeners that are the heart and soul of CJAD 800. To those who will carry on, be aware, I'll be listening.
This has been the Montreal Now Podcast. I'm David Hertel. Take care.
This has been the Montreal Now Podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6 on CJAD 800 or through the iHeartRadio app.